Every year, the tropical paradise of Thailand attracts many travelers who want to enjoy the spectacular scenery and the ringing silence of this land. However, in 2019, a lonely tourist, Miriam Beelte, who interrupted her business trip to visit the legendary white sandy coast of Thailand, suffered a terrible tragedy. During one of the excursions, the girl tragically died. When the investigation began, the police quickly realized that Miriam's death was not an accident. Subsequently, law enforcement officers discovered CCTV footage that helped uncover the gruesome truth. Our story takes place on one of Thailand's islands, Koh Chin, located in the Gulf of Thailand, which washes the east coast of the central part of the country. According to statistics, the population of Koh Chin is about 7,000 people. Despite the fact that the island is located near the capital Bangkok, it is not as popular among tourists as other resort destinations. Fishing is the main source of income and the engine of Cochabamba's economy, providing the main income for the locals. However, this has not stopped the friendly islanders from warmly welcoming travelers. Koh Chin is especially attractive to those who seek authenticity and want to immerse themselves in the real life of Thai people, learn about their customs, traditions, and culture. In March 2019, Miriam Beelte, a 26-year-old native of the German city of Hildesheim, who went on an independent trip to Thailand, visited the island of Koh Chang. Since her school days, the girl has been distinguished by her diligence and extraordinary abilities. After completing her secondary education, Miriam entered the University of Hanover, where she studied mechanical engineering in depth for 5 years and later earned a master's degree. Thanks to the thorough knowledge and professional skills she gained during her studies, she quickly found a decent job and started working as an engineer in a small design company. In mid-2018, Miriam changed jobs, moving to a larger company specializing in automotive manufacturing. There, she took a position as a design engineer. At the time of her trip to Thailand in 2019, Miriam was living in her native Hildesheim with her parents, as she was not in a serious relationship at the time. She devoted almost all of her free time to the work and activities of her international company, which often sent her abroad on business trips. At the end of March 2019, Miriam's employers sent her on another business trip. This time, the engineer had to fly to Southeast Asia to hold a series of important negotiations with several key suppliers. Although she loved traveling and discovering new parts of the world, a business trip was always different from a real vacation, during which she could completely relax and enjoy the benefits of being a tourist. So this time, Miriam decided to combine work and leisure in a smart way and stay in Thailand for a few extra days after the business trip was over. She had heard a lot about the incredible white sandy beaches, turquoise ocean waters, and rich historical heritage of this exotic country. So she dreamed of finally seeing all this alluring beauty with her own eyes and immersing herself in the atmosphere of Thailand that attracts tourists from all over the world. After completing her business meetings, Miriam boarded a plane and headed to Bangkok with the intention of exploring the sights and corners of the kingdom on her own. Traveling alone always entails certain risks and dangers, but she had considerable experience in such trips and knew how to behave in a foreign country so as not to endanger herself. She strictly followed simple safety rules. Do not go out alone after dark, keep valuables with you, and be on the lookout for strangers. Although Miriam always felt relatively safe during her travels, she realized that a young woman traveling alone should be prepared for unforeseen situations. Unfortunately, we can never be sure what intentions lie behind the thoughts of others and whether they are up to no good. Miriam, however, did not let her fears and doubts overshadow her eagerness to fully enjoy the warm Thai sunshine, the friendly smiles of the locals, and the fabulous scenery. Shortly after arriving in Bangkok, the girl went on an excursion to Pattaya in the southeast of the country, not far from which the mysterious island of Koh Chang is located. On Sunday, April 7, 2019, 26-year-old Miriam Beelte bought a ferry ticket and headed directly to the island, planning to spend a few hours there and return to Pattaya in the evening after an exciting program of activities. Her plans were simple: to taste the delicious local. Her plans were simple: to try the delicious local seafood, visit the ancient temples dotted around the island, and soak up the coastal atmosphere and enjoy the sea breeze. Around noon, Miriam arrived in Koh Chin and immediately rented a motorcycle, one of the most popular forms of transportation in Thailand. She planned her route in advance using Google Maps and set off to see the sights. Among the locations she chose was a white stone temple located on top of a hill. This shrine is known for the Buddha's footprint and is considered very important to Buddhists. The temple is located in a picturesque corner of the island, and the hilltop offers a breathtaking view of the surrounding scenery. Miriam likes such quiet places where she could enjoy spiritual and cultural sights alone without the noisy crowds of tourists. However, she could not even imagine the terrible fate that befell her in this seemingly peaceful and gracious place. Having reached the desired location, Miriam left her rented motorcycle at the foot of the hill, nodded affably to the flower vendor, and headed up the stone steps to the temple. To get to the shrine, it was necessary to overcome a rather steep and tiring section, which only physically fit people could do. A CCTV camera recorded the girl climbing the stone steps to the monument. Usually it takes about 5 minutes to get there and back. Miriam reached the temple, but no one else saw her alive. This seemed strange because the stone steps were the only way back down the hill. There were simply no other entrances or paths. Miriam's rented motorcycle was still parked at the foot of the hill next to the flower stand. Despite all the beauty of the temple, there were no other interesting places on the top of the hill, worthy of staying there for a long time. The main question was why the girl had stayed there for so long, and why she hadn't returned. Traveling alone, Miriam often dropped out of social media for several hours, completely immersed in reality. However, when the day turned into night on April 7th and she still did not get in touch, her family and friends in Germany began to worry, fearing that something bad might have happened to her. The next morning, on Monday, April 8th, a young Thai tourist decided to walk along a remote path leading to a white stone temple with a Buddha's footprint. Halfway up the path, he noticed a small crevice on the side of the stairs that caught his eye because of its unusual shape. Approaching it, he was horrified to find the body of a young woman with fair skin. She was dead, lying between two huge boulders in a pool of her own blood. The body was covered with old branches, leaves, and other debris. The tourist immediately reported the gruesome discovery to law enforcement. Investigators soon arrived at the scene. The deceased was a German woman, Miriam Beelte, who had disappeared the day before. After examining the girl's body, the police concluded that her death was not accidental. She couldn't have slipped, fallen into the gorge, and died. Miriam was not wearing any clothes, one of her legs was broken, and numerous injuries were visible on her head and face, as if caused by a heavy blunt object, such as a brick or stone. Unfortunately, it soon became clear that she had also been raped before her death. However, what exactly happened to the tourist remained a mystery at the time. The White Stone Buddha Temple had only one entrance and exit, which were monitored by video surveillance cameras. It was they who recorded Miriam climbing the hill. It soon became clear that a young man was following the girl up the stairs, and he immediately became one of the main suspects. The video footage showed the man arriving at the bottom of the hill on a motorcycle and parking. He then briefly talked to a flower stall seller and bought a small bouquet of dahlias from him. After that, the stranger walked back to the temple. The flower seller saw the young man walk quickly after Miriam, and sometime later the same stranger returned from the stairs with traces of something light on his dark clothes, looking like dirt or possibly blood. The man asked the suspicious visitor if he was okay, to which he waved his hand and replied that he had just fallen. The shopkeeper immediately became suspicious, so he tried to memorize the unconscious young man's appearance and wrote down the make and license plate of his motorcycle just in case. And it was not in vain, because after Miriam Beelte's body was discovered, the florist passed all the information he had gathered to the police. Investigators soon found out that the motorcycle was registered in the name of a 24-year-old local man, Ranakorn Ramrun. Ranakorn was an indigenous resident of the island of Cochabamba. The young man lived alone, had a small boat business and a motorcycle. He worked as a garbage collector on the beaches. During the day, he traveled around the coast by boat, collecting garbage from the water and also cleaned the area on the shore. Ranakorn was described by his fellow villagers as a quiet and calm guy who preferred solitude. After work, he usually returned home, turned on the TV, and enjoyed a beer. It seemed that the 24-year-old's life was typical for his age. However, few people knew that Ranakorn had dark secrets of his own, which he carefully concealed. The young man suffered from a serious drug addiction and regularly used illegal substances, rarely being sober. The day after the murder of Miriam Beelte, when Ranakorn Romran returned home from work in the evening, he was detained and arrested. The suspect was taken to the police station for interrogation, and within hours he confessed to everything. The case of the German tourist's murder was solved within 24 hours of her death. Ranakorn said that on the morning of April 7th, a Sunday, he woke up, and instead of having breakfast, he drank 2 beers and 2 glasses of hard liquor. But this was not enough for the guy. He was drawn to drugs. He took another dose, got on his motorcycle, and went for a ride around the island. His ride ended at the foot of the Temple Mountain, where he first saw Miriam climbing the stone steps. It was then that the unkind thought of the fair-skinned beauty flashed into Ranakorn's gloomy mind. His drunken imagination drew ugly pictures, and he decided to act. Noticing a flower stand nearby, the young man bought a small bouquet of dahlias, hoping that an attractive stranger would appreciate his gallantry. With flowers in hand, he began to climb the stairs after Miriam. Catching up with her, Ranakorn tried to strike up a conversation. The girl felt uncomfortable when the stranger gave her the flowers and then proposed a shameless act right on the hillside before reaching the temple. Miriam refused. She found herself alone with the stranger in a deserted place, and he asked her frankly inappropriate questions. The frightened girl had no choice but to turn around and run away. Ranakorn, however, was not about to take no for an answer and ran after her. In a moment, he caught up with his victim, grabbed her and dragged her into the bushes. Miriam screamed and struggled with all her might, but no one could hear her or come to her aid. I will not describe all the horrific details of this crime. I will only say that when the rapist finished his heinous deed, Miriam managed to escape from his grasp. She ran down the hill, trying to get away from this monster as quickly as possible. Then another evil thought flashed into Ranakorn's gloomy head, to catch up with the girl and kill her. Otherwise she would escape, and he would be imprisoned. Jumping to his feet and tearing off his clothes, he ran after her with all his might. Unfortunately, Miriam slipped on the way down and injured her leg, panicked and terrified. Ranakorn caught up with her, grabbed a huge rock that was lying nearby, and began to beat her over the head. Miriam died on the spot from her injuries. Ranakorn's only mistake was trying to hide the body. He dragged the dead girl up the slope, threw her between boulders, and lightly covered her with old leaves, branches, and debris. However, the corpse was still visible right from the stairs leading to the temple. So the next morning, Miriam was found by a Thai tourist heading to the top of the hill. After committing the crime, Ranakorn returned home, immediately washed his bloody clothes, and then collapsed on the couch, turned on the TV, and smoked a pack of Xanabrat cigarettes. It was his last evening at large, as it hadn't even been a day since he had been arrested. After confessing to everything, he took part in the reconstruction of the crime, describing in detail the last minutes of Miriam Beelte's life. During the investigative experiment, the suspect's head was covered with a bag to hide his identity from prying eyes. Thai authorities closely monitored the investigation. 3 months after the tragedy, the trial began. The main evidence of Ranakorn's guilt was CCTV footage, the testimony of a flower seller, and his own confession. The young man never apologized for his actions, but his mother apologized in court on behalf of her son. The woman said that she and Ranakorn lived separately, and she had no idea what her son was doing. Her son's actions shocked her to the core. The woman said that she and Ranakorn were separated, and she had no idea what her son was doing. Her son's actions shocked her to the core, and she urged the court to punish him to the fullest extent of the law. The highest penalty for murder in Thailand is the death penalty. Ranakorn's mother admitted that she was afraid to let her son go free because he might repeat his heinous crime and take someone else's life. The woman suggested that he be sentenced to life imprisonment or even execution. Ranakorn Romran pleaded guilty to the murder of Miriam Beelte. He was sentenced to death by hanging for this brutal and heinous crime. It is known that the murderer is still on death row, awaiting the day of his execution. Residents of Kho Khin Island were shocked and stunned by the news of the death of the 26-year-old German tourist. Thailand is generally considered to be a very peaceful country, so the fact that a local resident behaved so cruelly and disrespectfully with a visitor was truly horrifying. Such an atrocity has never happened on Kho Khin before. So the islanders hope that this story will not affect their future lives and will not scare tourists away from visiting the island. The community of Cochabamba rallied to express condolences to the victim's family. People of all ages and professions came to the place where Miriam's body was found, bringing candles, flowers, and wreaths, crying and praying for the murdered girl, expressing their condolences to her family. It is no secret that Thailand's financial well-being is largely dependent on the tourism industry. Negative incidents of this kind can cause serious damage to the financial situation of the entire country. That is why the Thai authorities always try to solve crimes committed against foreigners as soon as possible. However, unfortunately, there are often cases when information about such tragedies is simply hushed up and not allowed to be released to the press. After Ranakorn's sentencing, local police assured that there were no more villains on Cochin, and only polite and friendly people lived there. Residents of the island urged tourists not to be afraid to come here, despite the fact that Cochabamba's reputation has suffered somewhat. Of course, this is nothing compared to the extent to which Miriam and her family have suffered. Miriam Beelte was a bright young woman who was just starting out in life. She was an exemplary worker with great plans for the future, which, unfortunately, were never realized. In honor of Miriam Beelte's memory, the University of Hanover, where she studied, established a scholarship to support young engineers. It was a tribute to a diligent student and gifted professional whose life was so tragically cut short.